All right. Hey, Jared.
Hey, how are you?
Good. We've got Sean Wilson connecting to audio. We got Michael Landsman on. All right, everybody. Michael, long time no talk.
I know, long time no talk. How you doing, Martin? How's it? You need another log on that fire there?
We put a few on. Like the fire, it's actually like low 40s and raining up here, so it's a great day for a fire.
Yeah, same thing here, actually. Same thing here. The only problem with the fire is you have to clean the fireplace after you use it. No, we still have fire. We still have fires from time to time, but we don't have one going during the day.
Gotcha.
Not quite. It's not quite as posh.
Well, you know.
How are you doing, Sean?
I'm doing very well.
Good. Nice to see you in a nice, comfortable blanket there.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's nice.
He's got it. And Jared, I think you know. Jared is wave. Jared.
Hi.
Hey, Jared. How are you? Where are you?
How are you, Michael? I'm in LA now. I used to be in New York, but.
Oh, okay. You're in LA. All right, great. Didn't you have another guy out in LA?
Yeah,
Whit.
Whit.
Whit. He just joined.
Hi, Whit. How are you?
Good. How are you, Michael?
Doing great.
Also, Alex is on here as well. Alex Magoob.
Yeah, Alex Magoob. So you've got.
I see Alex.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm ready to go back to the office.
Oh yeah. Why is that? Out of curiosity.
Well, look, I mean, you know, it's hard to break a habit of 20 years, right? And you know, it's a different experience working with people when you're all virtual and it wasn't planned.
Yes.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, I've actually been working virtually for years on Fridays and have a telepresence robot that drives around the office. But there's nobody there to drive around and talk to now.
Let's see. Hey, Christina, how are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm good.
Good. And how do you pronounce your first name? Is it Viveka? Is that your name? Is that how you pronounce your name?
It is Viveka, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. So welcome everybody to the inaugural, and if people just come on or ring on as it goes, but this is our inaugural Ask the Expert series. And I'm going to be able to, I think I'll keep everybody, I'll keep everybody unmuted for the moment, but if I hear a lot of background, I'll put it on mute. And we're here for kind of a half an hour, and if you guys have questions, I think the best way would be through the chat box. Then you can ask everybody stuff. Our expert here, Michael Landsman. So let me just kind of start it off right away and do a formal introduction. So I've known Michael, I've known you for what, about 18 years? I was trying to do the math.
I was going to say 20, but 18 is probably about right.
Right. So 18 to 20 years. And we both kind of we got into our respective careers. You've been in for how long? Have you been in?
I graduated in 98. I worked at a large law firm for a couple of years for Mayor Koch in the real estate and governmental relations department. And then I came to Holman O'Hara in 2001, a few months before 9/11. So actually my first 6 months at a law firm in the real estate market was experiencing 9/11. Wow. And that was, everybody's saying, why are you so confident? I said, well, we've been through this before. We've been through this with 9/11. We've been through this with 2008. We've been through this with the blackout. I mean, this is different. I admit that it is a little different, but there have been times where the market is completely shut down, After 9/11 was one of them. It took us several weeks to get everyone back to work. And believe it or not, 6 months later, and some of you may remember this, 6 months later, there was a lot of activity in the market, even places like downtown.
Yeah. Tribeca was one of the first neighborhoods to come back.
Right. And I mean, and so it's, it was a difficult time after 9/11, certainly for the first couple of weeks, only because that's something like that had never happened before. But once people started to get back to work, it really opened up quickly again. This is different, of course, but also now we're seeing things starting up again. I got our first transaction in since this about 2 days ago, a co-op deal down on 20th Street.
Oh, great. So that kind of,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, good. So that kind of leads into this, and just a quick little shout or another shout out for Michael. So he's co-managing partner of Home and O'Hara, really fantastic. This is a shameless plug. Really fantastic firm that deals with real estate trusts and estates, which is also going to be the second half of this conversation, and business as well. Correct, Michael?
That's correct. Absolutely. That's the general practice side. We also have a labor and ERISA department. They represent a lot of labor unions, and they're actually busier than ever, helping their clients navigate the shutdown. They have a lot of tradespeople in the unions that they represent. So, but we're a small firm. We're only 25, but we've been together for a long time. And as I said before, we've been through these tough times before, and we've always emerged stronger and better afterwards. So I'm confident that we'll come back after this as well. It's probably going to take a little longer than 9/11. Or a little bit longer maybe than 2008, but maybe not. So we'll see. I'm optimistic.
Right. No, I agree. So kind of the first question is our closing, property that's in contract, are closings happening? Is everything shut down till further notice, or how is that working?
Well, closings, the deals that are in contract, the closings are happening slowly. And it depends upon a number of factors. Number one, is there any financing involved? If there's financing involved, those deals tend to close slower than deals without financing. Why? Because the banks have shifted a lot of their personnel from processing loans to processing things like PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. And there's only so many people in the kitchen, so to speak, to cook whatever needs to be cooked. So they've moved all these people over, and that's created a lot of delays, which is unfortunate. The other thing, of course, it's slowed down for the residential market are the managing agents. So if the managing agents are closed, or the managing agents are running on a limited with a limited staff, then those deals are slower to close. The other category that's somewhat problematic are deals where you have a board package submitted, but the prospective purchasers have not been interviewed by the board, and some of the boards are scheduling video interviews, and some of the boards are waiting. So
interesting.
It really each deal is a little bit different, of course, but in general, we are seeing things close. A lot of the attorneys that work in this area have agreed to help each other, to hold closings in escrow. And I think in general, things are actually working pretty well. Which is good. And hopefully, and what I've seen recently, hopefully this will be one of those watershed moments where it will force the industry to take a look at itself and say, do we really need to get all these people in the room for a closing?
Right.
Or maybe
people in a
right.
Absolutely.
Maybe it would be more efficient if we close deals in New York like we close deals around the country, which is another part of our practice. We do a lot of business around the country, and 100% of those closings are done in escrow.
Wow.
Wire transfers and FedExes. And there are some unique features about the New York City real estate market, like co-op stocks and leases, right? Where they have the payoff bank needs to send their attorney with the original stock certificate to be surrendered at the closing in exchange for a check. But there are ways to work around that. And I think, and I'm hoping that the managing agents and the title companies can work together to craft a solution whereby there's an escrow agent and they can hold these closings without having to get everybody in the room at the same time. That would be a huge savings and efficient for everyone.
I agree. I agree. Now, since we have a black swan event here, and it seems to be happening, anyway, it's a black swan event. Are buyers coming to the table and trying to renegotiate deals, and how does that work? Are there people trying to get out of the contract? What's all going along with that?
We've seen people, deals that are in contract. We have seen some renegotiation attempts, but and we have seen some sellers coming back and making some reasonable concessions. But anything that's actually in contract, it hasn't been 100% a pro buyer's situation. In other words, the market was already, and you can speak to this better than I can, but it was already a pretty good market for purchasers before this event. So with the pricing already discounted, we're not seeing a lot of sellers just saying, okay, we'll just hack off another 15%, because they already had to get to the point where they were when they got to contract. So they're not exactly throwing in the towel here. At least that's been in my experience. So of course, people have held back on listing things in new listings, which is understandable. But I think that as soon as the city comes back to work, which would probably be in the next 30 to 45 days, we'll have a late spring market rather than a spring market. And maybe it'll be a summer market. We'll all be busy in August for a change, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we've been saying here at Compass is, business has not evaporated. It's just been delayed. So if you're the homeowner or buyer or seller and really want to do something, as opposed, like you just said, usually in the New York market, spring is very busy, summer is quiet. You enjoy your summer now, so to speak, because spring is happening.
Enjoy your summer by the fireplace.
Right. Now, you just mentioned a deal just came across your desk. Now, are people signing contracts with properties sight unseen, or was this a deal that happened before? How does that work?
Well, no, this is a deal that the prospective purchaser had seen the apartment. The only thing that's different, the prospective purchaser happens to be an attorney at a large law firm who probably won't be losing his job because the demand for legal services in many cases has gone up, is increased rather than diminished. There is a financing contingency, which is a little surprising because normally on a deal like that, there probably wouldn't be a financing contingency, but the seller is willing to give them a contingency. The other thing that's unique about this is now there's a COVID-19 rider, which if it's depending on the parties negotiating, I mean, of course, it's the lawyers who are doing the lion's share of the negotiating of these riders. I found some of them to be so loosey-goosey that you just end up with an option contract, which personally, as a seller, I don't prefer that. I'd like to know that I have somebody vested in the deal. So I spent the morning actually trying to, I won't say gut, but take out some of the provisions for that rider that made it a little more favorable to the seller. Not being unreasonable, but a contract should be a contract at the end of the day. It needs to have some teeth to it. So that's really the only change. I suspect with this deal, the purchaser has strong financials, employed, and I suspect it'll go through as planned. It may just be delayed. We're looking at a closing date of mid-June. It might be mid-July.
Okay.
But the contract contemplates that.
Got it. And meanwhile, if you guys have any questions you want to ask, go ahead with the chat box now, because I just want to get about 3 minutes on this before we go to the next topic. But quickly, Michael, do you foresee people asking for funding contingencies in addition to mortgage contingencies?
Well, they have been. I mean, some of the COVID-19 rider provisions I've seen give the purchaser a lot of leeway in terms of the funding contingencies.
Okay.
And some sellers are willing to take that risk under the circumstances.
Understood.
You know, it really depends upon the deal. Is it a sort of a starter apartment, about $1 million, or is it a $6 million townhouse that's all cash? I mean, these are different considerations. But I think for most deals, you are seeing some kind of contingencies for funding, and it's not because of the creditworthiness of the borrower. It's because banks are really hard to get to the table these days.
Question. Yeah. I know. I got it.
So
Michael, I'm just going to jump into the questions here.
Sure.
So the big question is how are walkthroughs are happening? Is it a virtual walkthrough? Do you put money in escrow? How does that work?
Well, the walkthroughs are happening. Most of them aren't happening, and if they are happening, it's somehow virtually. But there aren't many walkthroughs that are actually happening in co-op buildings and condo buildings.
Okay.
You know, obviously, if it's a townhouse, then that's not a problem. But managing agents and co-op boards are not typically allowing non-residents into the buildings currently. I suspect that will change at some point. Maybe they'll start letting people go up the service elevator.
Okay.
Right. There have been some movings going on in some cases. The next question looks like, Martin, if you want me to take that one, the discount.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Look, this is a hard question to answer, but generally speaking, I think people are looking at the facts of the deal and trying to grapple with things. For example, is this a gut renovation? Will there be substantial material delays where the purchaser would have to carry an empty apartment for a year rather than 6 months or longer? Sellers can get their head around that. In other words, they can say, okay, that's worth 12 months maintenance or something like that. I've seen people ask for something like 5%, but I haven't seen anybody get that yet. And not in the residential context. In some cases, in the commercial context, we're seeing some bigger discounts, but those really have more to do with what the seller's plans are to do with the money. In other words, they may be obligated on the other end to buy something that they really want, that they think they're getting a discount on. So you get stuck in this domino effect, right, with deals. But generally in residential deals, I would say maybe a point or two might be a reasonable discount, but they're not much more than that. What's the next question, Martin?
The next one is are appraisals taking place, or how are appraisals happening?
Well, the same general rule applies with appraisers having access to the apartments, but because the apartments in New York City, many of the apartment buildings have so many units, we've seen some virtual appraisals where they've gotten information from other appraisers that have happened, or appraisals that have happened in the building, and they're using
Okay.
that. I mean, right? An apartment in the A line of such and such building that has 100 apartments in it, and a square footage and a track record. You know, if there isn't anything extraordinary about that particular apartment, if it hasn't been combined, or if it isn't a unique apartment, then we're seeing some appraisals come through. Outside of the city, we're seeing a lot of appraisals come through, right? We've been able to do surveys, get phase ones. Appraisers are operating, ironically or coincidentally, it's often the guy who owns the appraisal company, because he's not allowed to have his people come to work. So you actually get the guy who started the company doing the appraisal. So I think if you work for yourself, then you can let yourself go to work. Right. So, but if you're forced to shut your business down because it's non-essential, then you're not compelling your people to come to work, which is the right way to approach it.
Understood. So at the end of this, I'm sure people may have more questions, and we'll, on the link I'll introduce, or with the link I'll have your contact information on it, because I want to get to the next topic quickly and be respectful of everybody for the half an hour.
Sure.
Which is wills, trusts, and estates, and all that jazz, right? A black swan event is always oh my gosh, maybe it's time for me to look to see what would happen if I get sick and die, God forbid.
Right.
Go ahead. So first and foremost, so like, what do I even need a will? Why would I? I mean, what's?
Well, look, I mean, the answer is yes, of course. Right. If you have assets, and even if you don't, but certainly if you have a child or if you have any other assets, you definitely need to have a will or something in place. As a practical matter, it's not as important for some people at certain stages of their life. But the advice is always to have a simple will, if that's what it would take. And unfortunately, you never know what's going to happen. And we have had clients who tested positive for COVID. We've had a few hospitalized. Fortunately, they've been released. So that's a great thing. And some of them did have their estate plans in place, and some of them didn't. So yesterday, we had a client who never got around to getting his will done. He has a son, actually lives in Rome, and he has a successful business. And we conducted our first will and estate planning execution via video conference. The governor signed an executive order on Tuesday, and we conducted the first video supervision yesterday. And that was a client who called us last Thursday, who we couldn't figure out how we were going to get that done for him, because until the executive order came out, we couldn't do it remotely. We actually had to send somebody to his apartment. But clearly we're not comfortable sending anybody that works for us into somebody's apartment. Either they can get sick, or they could make somebody else, infect somebody else. So it worked out well for the client, and he's actually doing better.
Good. So I have a question, yeah. Michael. So quickly, and you have the website Urgent Planning, which I think is great.
Right.
So traditionally, as a quick broad overview here in our limited time, with the will or trust and estate, do you send out a huge questionnaire for people to answer stuff?
No. Typically, we can have a consultation on the phone or by video conference, and we get the nuts and bolts of what they want. And then we produce the draft documents and we send them to them, and then we schedule a meeting. Now, of course, that process can be supercharged, if you will, by a phone consultation, preparing the documents electronically, emailing the documents to the client, and then the client could print them out. I mean, we could do the whole thing in a matter of an hour and a half or so. You could,
Wow.
you could under these circumstances. That presumes that the person has a printer in their apartment, right? But no, I mean, some people don't. Some people don't use email either. But we have messengers in the city that can get to people. And if you're outside of the city, we can drive and drop the documents off, and then conduct the execution by video of the documents. In other words, we have to witness the client sign the documents, so that the client will hold the documents up. We'll verify that those are the documents that we prepared. We can see the signature. So that's how that works. And really we're in the service business, right? So we're here to help the clients get it done as quickly and efficiently as possible. So I hesitate sending someone their homework when we can do their homework by talking to them on the phone. If they have emails, exchanging by email, and then we can produce the documents to get it done for them.
Very good. So now what about, okay, so quickly, wills versus trusts and estate planning. Is there a dollar number where suddenly it changed? If I'm worth $3 million, now I have to have an estate?
Well, you mean a will
like,
versus a trust?
Yeah, like what's kind of the broad?
Yeah, well, look, generally speaking, like I said, everybody needs a will, particularly if you have kids or you have assets. If you have assets in other jurisdictions, or if you're concerned about diminished capacity or other considerations, then we recommend a trust. In terms of asset level, I mean, it's really hard to tell. I mean, if you had $1 million in a bank account and you had a beneficiary on that account, then you might not need a trust. But my strong preference for people, including myself, is I have two trusts. I have a life insurance trust and I have a revocable grantor trust, because I have property in different states. And there is a risk that I'll suffer from diminished capacity at some point, because my father does and has. So I have a trust set up for myself. And the benefit of that is, if someone suffers diminished capacity, their successor affairs without any interference. And the problem with probate is generally it costs more, but that's really the small part of it. It's a lot easier to contest a will than it is to contest a trust.
Why is that?
Well, because for the will, anytime you submit a will for probate, and this is in New York State specifically, you have to have a waiver and consent signed by the distributees. The distributees are that's the legal term for the people that would take under the laws of intestacy. So we have a lot of families, for example, where they have estranged children, or they have another problem in the family where those people would not consent to the probate of the will. But if the client has everything into a trust, the successor trustee can just continue to act as if they were the original trustee and grantor of the trust. And by the way, wills are public documents, whereas trusts are in a separate department at the surrogate's court where the public does not have access to them. So yeah,
so it's more private.
It's much more private. Yeah, I mean, of course, if it's the subject to litigation through discovery and so forth, the parties would have access to it, but not the general public, right? The general public can go down to the surrogate's court and pull up a copy of anybody's will they want to.
Wow. So quickly, we're running out of time. And if anybody has any questions on wills or estate planning, but what is the cost? What is the general cost of, I want to do a will? How much would that cost? And trust and estate, I have complicated.
Well, look, I mean, generally speaking, it depends upon the circumstances. I mean, we could do a basic will could cost you as little as $1,000 or something like that. But if you want to have a basic estate planning package with a power of attorney, a living will, a healthcare proxy, a HIPAA form, which enables your agent to obtain healthcare records. In New York, they also have the appointment of an agent for the disposition of remains, which is essentially a document that allows an agent to be appointed to deal with the remains. You know, that sort of package runs about $2,500, but it takes several hours of drafting and so forth. And then a trust would be a little bit more than that on top of that, but not much more than that. The expense comes with the client's willingness or unwillingness to actually retitle the assets. A lot of clients are proactive, and the proactive clients can do a lot of that on their own. Some clients say, you know what, we'd prefer to have a paralegal just take care of it, right? So
Got it.
back to the service, you know, it depends upon the level of service people want and prefer, and that's really how that plays out. But our firm is certainly very reasonable. We're a smaller firm, and we handle a lot of this work. We have 5 dedicated people on the trust and estates team, and we can help people out, like I said, on an expedited basis, and have been doing so for years.
Wow.
Nights
That's
and weekends.
Fair enough. So we're at kind of the 1:30 mark, Michael. Is there anything that you want to say in closing? And again, anybody out there that has any questions they want to type in?
Well, in closing, I'd like to thank you, Martin, for making this available. I think it's a great idea to have people come on and talk about these topics. I think it's very informative and timely. If anybody has any questions, feel free to email me. I'm sure you'll put a link up
absolutely.
on your site from that. But I think that the big takeaway from this whole experience has been communication is key. If you have a problem or if you have an issue, please reach out to either your broker or your lawyer or both, and start the conversation going. I mean, it's really important to keep lines of communication open during this time, and because things will work out. We'll get through this. We will definitely get through this. I watched the Queen's little thing on the.
Oh yeah.
She did a great job. I mean, she's amazing. She really is. But let's focus on the health and the health and safety first, and then everything else will work itself out. It really, I honestly believe that. I've spoken to hundreds of people over the last couple of weeks, and really the communication is key.
That's great, Michael. Well, I think those are great closing thoughts and ideas to go with. And Michael, thank you again. Michael
You're
Lansing
welcome.
of Holman O'Hara. You are our inaugural interview here on the Ask the Expert series. So
thank you very much.
So much.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks everybody for being on it. I really
Have a
appreciate
great
it.
day.
Okay. Goodbye.